In the beginning there is always kindness. The empath enters the world as a creature of light, gentle, observant, eager to heal what is broken in others. Their heart becomes a sanctuary for the wounded, their mind a refuge for the lost. They are governed not by power, but by understanding, not by conquest, but by connection. Yet, it is in this purity that danger hides. For every kingdom that falls begins first with the corruption of its most innocent guardian. The empath gives and gives, until the world teaches them the price of their compassion. The narcissist finds them easily, like a wolf scenting blood in soft snow. He admires their warmth only as a tool, their forgiveness as a leash. And with every false apology, every manipulation, every act of silent cruelty, he reshapes their mercy into chains. But the human spirit, once burdened to the edge of exhaustion, begins to change. When the empath grows tired of pain, their eyes sharpen. The one who once listened begins to observe. The one who once cried begins to calculate. They study the narcissist's hunger, his vanity, his fragile confidence that hides behind arrogance. They realize that his power never came from strength. It came from their compliance. And that revelation is the beginning of a revolution. The fed-up empath does not announce their transformation. They do not scream or seek revenge with visible rage. They withdraw quietly, and in that silence, they build strategy. They start to mirror the narcissist's game, but without his emotional blindness. They understand the manipulator more deeply than the manipulator understands himself. Where the narcissist depends on illusion, the awakened empath wields truth like a weapon, and truth, in the hands of one who once loved you, is lethal. This transformation is not a loss of virtue, but a rebirth of intelligence. The empath becomes selective, cautious, and cold where warmth once dwelled. They cease to beg for loyalty and begin to demand respect. They are no longer food for the ego of another. They are famine. And when the narcissist returns for control, he finds only emptiness staring back at him. The same heart that once forgave without question now judges without mercy. This is how the balance of power reverses, not through vengeance, but through awakening. The wolf finally realizes the lamb has learned the art of teeth. In the beginning, the empath moves through the world like a silent guardian of hearts. Their soul is a vessel of gentleness, and their purpose seems clear: to heal, to listen, to understand. They are drawn to pain not because they enjoy it, but because they believe it can be undone. They see wounds as temporary and cruelty as a symptom of suffering. Their compassion becomes their compass, guiding them toward the broken, the lost, and the manipulative alike. Yet, in their innocence, they do not yet realize that mercy, when given without limits, becomes the most dangerous weakness of all. The narcissist appears like a charming storm, brilliant, confident, magnetic. To the empath, this energy feels intoxicating, almost divine. The narcissist speaks of grand ideas, wounded pasts, and unseen greatness. They know how to mimic depth. They know how to wear pain like perfume. The empath, being intuitive yet hopeful, believes they can be the one to heal what others could not. What they do not see is that this is the first step into a psychological snare. For every kind gesture they offer, the narcissist records it as permission. For every forgiveness granted, they learn the boundaries that can be broken next time. The empath begins to absorb the narcissist's storms, his rage, his insecurity, his coldness. They mistake it for love's trial, believing that understanding someone's darkness is proof of loyalty. Slowly, the empath becomes the stabilizer of chaos, the emotional anchor of a person who offers no anchor in return. Their world narrows around the narcissist's needs, and their own identity begins to fade. They think that love demands endurance, that patience is virtue. But what they are actually practicing is self-erasure. The narcissist thrives on this. He tests how far the empath will go, how much they will endure. Every apology is a rehearsal, every lie a test, every insult a game. The empath, being sincere, cannot imagine that deceit could be so deliberate. So they explain, forgive, and hope again. They mistake manipulation for misunderstanding. But one can only bleed so long before realizing that the knife is intentional. Then something subtle begins to shift. Exhaustion becomes clarity. The empath starts to notice patterns, the recycled apologies, the strategic silences, the emotional whiplash. They begin to see that their endless giving does not lead to peace, but to deeper bondage. Their intuition, once silenced by love, now awakens with ruthless precision. They begin to see the narcissist not as a wounded soul, but as a collector of energy, feeding on empathy, thriving on control. This is the silent birth of power. The empath stops explaining, stops defending, stops hoping for change. They begin to watch. They observe every word, every gesture, and realize that emotion, when misplaced, can be the enemy of wisdom. They understand that mercy given to the unworthy is self-betrayal. In that understanding, something ancient awakens within them, a cold clarity that transforms pain into perception. And when perception replaces emotion, the empath becomes something the narcissist never anticipated: unpredictable, unreadable, untouchable. The lamb begins to see with the eyes of the wolf. Once the empath awakens, the narcissist loses his throne. For years he ruled through confusion, feeding on attention, guilt, and emotional chaos. His power existed only because the empath believed the game was about love. But the fed-up empath learns that it was always about control. This realization poisons the charm that once hypnotized them. They no longer melt under flattery, nor shatter under silence. They have mastered indifference, the one weapon the narcissist cannot endure. The fed-up empath begins to move in shadows the narcissist cannot see. They mimic understanding but feel nothing. They smile as the narcissist speaks, yet behind that calm face lies calculation. They have learned the art of emotional camouflage, the same art once used against them. Every insult, every manipulation becomes a lesson, every betrayal a map of the enemy's mind. The narcissist, accustomed to domination, cannot comprehend this new strength. He mistakes the empath's quiet for submission. He does not realize it is analysis. Power begins to shift subtly. The empath withdraws energy, and suddenly the narcissist feels invisible. His ego starves in silence. The attention that once fed him becomes scarce, and panic sets in. He circles back with apologies, promises, tears. But the empath is immune now. What once pierced their soul now barely grazes their consciousness. They have learned emotional detachment, the most Machiavellian form of control. The narcissist depends on reaction. The empath now provides none. This stillness drives the manipulator into madness. He seeks conflict, chaos, anything to restore the familiar dynamic. But the empath gives him only cold civility. Their silence becomes a mirror, forcing him to confront his own emptiness. And that reflection is unbearable to one who survives only by deceiving himself. The most dangerous weapon of the fed-up empath is not cruelty, it is apathy. They no longer wish to change or heal the narcissist. They have learned the futility of saving what refuses salvation. Their empathy becomes precise, reserved only for the deserving. This newfound coldness terrifies the narcissist because he cannot manipulate what no longer feels. The once gentle soul he underestimated has become his psychological equal, and in some ways his superior. When the empath awakens from the trance of manipulation, the world changes shape before their eyes. What once appeared as love now reveals itself as a contract of control. The narcissist, who once seemed powerful and mysterious, now stands exposed as a creature of dependency, dependent on admiration, on chaos, on being the center of another's attention. The empath, who used to revolve around this false sun, begins to step away, and the narcissist feels the chill of space for the first time. The empath's silence becomes their first act of rebellion. They stop reacting to the narcissist's provocations, the insults disguised as jokes, the guilt masked as concern, the calculated absences designed to create fear. The empath, who once rushed to fix everything, now simply watches. The narcissist misreads this as surrender. But what he cannot see is that the empath is no longer engaged in the same war. They are learning the deeper language of power restraint. In this stillness, the empath studies the manipulator with the calm precision of a strategist. They begin to recognize every emotional hook, every psychological tactic, The sudden warmth followed by cold withdrawal, the feigned victimhood meant to inspire guilt, the subtle rewriting of truth to create confusion. The empath begins to catalogue these moves like a chess player memorizing openings, and as understanding deepens, fear fades. What once overwhelmed now appears predictable. What once hurt now becomes information. The narcissist's control weakens because it relies entirely on the empath's reactions. Without reaction, there is no fuel, no energy to sustain his illusion of superiority. He becomes restless, desperate. He sends messages that go unanswered, creates crises to draw attention, tries to provoke jealousy, anger, anything that proves he still matters. But the empath has discovered the one form of power the narcissist cannot withstand: indifference. Indifference is not hatred, it is mastery. It is the refusal to be pulled into the emotional theater of manipulation. The empath no longer needs to win arguments, prove innocence, or explain truth. They let silence speak for them. They respond to lies with absence, to insults with calm, to provocation with observation. This psychological detachment is not cruelty, it is evolution. It is the moment the prey stops running and begins to walk through the forest with awareness of its own strength. The narcissist, who once thrived on emotional chaos, begins to unravel in this new reality. He feels unseen, and to one whose ego feeds on attention, invisibility is death. His confidence fractures, his charm begins to crack. He tries to regain control through pity, through nostalgia, through anger, but nothing works. The empath has developed immunity. Their mind, once enslaved by emotion, is now disciplined by insight. The fed-up empath no longer fights the narcissist directly. They simply outgrow the game. Their silence dismantles manipulation faster than confrontation ever could. Every time they refuse to react, the narcissist's illusion of dominance collapses. This is the quiet revolution, the invisible rebellion of the heart that has learned reason. And as the empath walks away without a word, the narcissist finally realizes the truth. The one he believed he controlled was, in the end, the only one who ever truly understood him. The fed-up empath begins to understand the deeper game, the one beyond emotions and affection. They see how the narcissist uses perception as power, spinning lies to craft his image. But the empath now plays the same game with greater precision. They master restraint, control their expressions, and learn the art of selective truth. In conversation, they reveal nothing but observe everything. Every pause, every shift of tone becomes information. They realize that the narcissist's greatest fear is exposure. His identity is a fragile illusion built on admiration and deceit. The empath, having seen the truth behind that mask, holds silent power. They can destroy his facade not by words, but by indifference, by refusing to validate his false greatness. The narcissist feeds on perception, the empath starves him of it. He begins to decay in the absence of attention, his self-constructed empire crumbling quietly. Meanwhile, the empath grows stronger in solitude. They learn the discipline of emotional control, the same discipline that once enslaved them when they lacked it. They begin to rebuild their mind like a fortress. Boundaries become walls, observation becomes armor. They learn to read intentions instead of words, patterns instead of promises. The world appears clearer now, no longer tinted by hope, but sharpened by realism. They stop trying to be good for others and begin to be wise for themselves. Compassion, once blind, now wears the eyes of strategy. Forgiveness becomes conditional, love becomes earned, and trust becomes a calculated investment. They have evolved into something the narcissist can neither use nor understand. The fed-up empath, once the prey, becomes the strategist. They no longer fight emotionally, they fight intellectually. They learn that the best revenge is not humiliation, it is transcendence. To be free, to live without dependence on the validation of others, is the ultimate form of dominance. And when the narcissist sees that he no longer has influence over them, he is destroyed not by punishment, but by irrelevance. The transformation of the empath deepens when they begin to understand the psychological machinery behind the narcissist's illusions. They now see manipulation not as a mystery but as a a pattern repeated endlessly, disguised as personality. The narcissist's need for validation, their craving for control, their obsession with appearances. These are not random behaviors, they are the architecture of insecurity. And once the empath recognizes this, the structure begins to crumble. The empath learns to study rather than to feel. They no longer waste energy on trying to decode apologies or promises. They watch with a quiet detachment, taking note of the exact moments when flattery turns into entitlement, when charm becomes weaponized. What used to confuse them now reveals itself as a cycle: idealize, devalue, discard, repeat. They realize that the narcissist's affection was never love, it was bait. The warmth was strategy, the coldness was punishment, and every compliment was a transaction designed to secure obedience. But now the empath no longer trades in emotion, they operate from observation. Every word, every silence, every gesture becomes data. The narcissist's greatest strength, his ability to manipulate feelings, loses its grip because the empath's feelings have become fortified behind logic. They begin to mirror the narcissist's tactics, but without malice. When they withhold emotion, it is not to harm, it is to protect. When they detach, it is not to dominate, it is to preserve sovereignty. The narcissist senses this shift but cannot comprehend it. His power has always depended on predictability. He knew how to provoke tears, how to extract apologies, how to ignite fear. But the empath now reacts to nothing. They have learned that silence can wound deeper than words, that calm can dismantle ego faster than confrontation. The narcissist starts to project confusion. "You've changed," he says. In truth, it is not change, it is awakening. The empath's heart is no longer a battlefield but a fortress. This new awareness gives rise to something even more powerful: self-control. The empath begins to master the art of emotional discipline. They no longer chase validation or engage in proving their worth. They see that arguments are traps designed to restore the narcissist's power through chaos, so they withdraw from drama entirely. They conserve energy, protect their peace, and let time reveal truth. The narcissist cannot compete with this kind of power, for it exists beyond the realm of emotional dependence. Meanwhile, the empath grows stronger in solitude. Isolation, once painful, now becomes sacred. In silence they learn who they are without manipulation whispering in their ear. They find clarity where once there was confusion, power where once there was pain. Their empathy evolves from blind compassion into strategic discernment. They no longer give freely, they give wisely. They no longer forgive endlessly, they forgive selectively. And so the empath who was once the victim becomes the visionary. They no longer wish to destroy the narcissist, they wish only to transcend him. Freedom, not revenge, becomes their mission. And when the narcissist finally realizes that he can no longer control the empath, he faces his greatest terror, the mirror of truth, held steady by the one he once believed was weak. Now the empath walks through the world differently. Their silence is power, their patience a weapon. They no longer seek to be understood, they prefer to be underestimated. Their calm presence hides a sharp intellect that studies everyone who enters their orbit. They know that human nature is a theater of desire, and they no longer play the victim or the savior. They play the observer. They understand that kindness, without control, becomes weakness. They give it now like a king gives gold, rarely and with purpose. Every relationship becomes a negotiation of energy, every conversation a test of character. They have learned what the narcissist never could: that power is not domination, but self-mastery. When the narcissist tries to re-enter their life, he finds a different landscape. The empath no longer reacts to guilt or affection. They treat him like a ghost, acknowledging his presence, but never giving it meaning. This emotional distance is not hatred, it is sovereignty. They are no longer bound by the illusions of love, they are free from the emotional taxation of manipulation. And the narcissist, once intoxicated by control, begins to crumble. His entire identity relied on being the center of someone else's world. Now he stands before the empath like a dethroned ruler, forgotten, powerless, invisible. He will rage, he will beg, he will provoke, but nothing will resurrect his dominion. The empath's indifference becomes the final judgment, the quiet execution of a tyrant who mistook mercy for weakness. The fed-up empath has become what the narcissist feared most, untouchable. Not through cruelty, but through understanding, they have seen the machinery of deceit and dismantled it piece by piece. Their victory is silent but absolute. Once the empath has reclaimed their clarity, they begin to walk through the world as if reborn, not softer, but sharper. Their demeanor changes in ways the narcissist and others cannot easily define. Their silence now carries weight. Their eyes, once filled with Nava warmth, now hold the steady calm of someone who sees too much to be fooled again. They have learned that power does not require noise, and that strength does not need display. Where once they spoke to be understood, now they prefer to observe and let the silence reveal who others truly are. The empath no longer seeks approval. They no longer chase validation from anyone, least of all those who once made them doubt their worth. They have come to understand that people's treatment of you is not a reflection of your value, but of their character. This knowledge becomes armor. It allows them to move through manipulation like a blade through smoke. Every attempt at deceit becomes transparent, every mask easily spotted. The empath now reads between words, between gestures, between silences. They have developed what many fear to possess, psychological precision. Kindness, once their unguarded instinct, has now become a measured act. They still give, but no longer recklessly. They understand that generosity without discernment attracts parasites, and compassion without limits invites predators. They no longer hand out empathy as charity. It is now an earned privilege. This shift is not bitterness, it is balance. It is the realization that to protect one's heart is not cruelty, it is strategy. The empath has learned that the world does not respect the endlessly forgiving, it respects the unshakably self-respecting. When the narcissist tries to return, as they always do, he finds no familiar ground left to stand on. The emotional door is closed, the energy connection severed. The empath listens, perhaps even smiles, but their heart remains untouched. They no longer react to manipulation, guilt, or charm. The same words that once disarmed them now sound hollow, rehearsed, predictable. The narcissist's greatest horror is to become irrelevant, and in the empath's silence, he meets that fate. The empath's indifference becomes a form of justice. They do not destroy the narcissist with vengeance, they destroy him with absence. He can no longer feed on their energy, no longer use their compassion as a mirror for his ego. He stands alone, stripped of control, forced to confront the emptiness within himself. The empath, meanwhile, stands in quiet triumph, not celebrating, not mocking, simply existing beyond his reach. And beyond this detachment lies something even more profound: peace. Not the fragile peace of denial, but the enduring peace of understanding. The empath has learned the laws of human power, how illusion sustains control, how silence dismantles it. They no longer play the emotional games of others because they see the board from above. They have become self-contained, self-governed, and self-possessed. The fed-up empath, once enslaved by emotion, now rules with awareness. They have mastered the rarest form of dominance, the power to no longer need dominance at all. Their control lies not in conquering others, but in being unconquerable within themselves. In the end, the most dangerous individual is not the cruel one. It is the one who has mastered compassion and chosen when not to use it. The fed-up empath stands at the edge of two worlds, the innocence of the giver and the wisdom of the survivor. They have walked through betrayal and emerged with perception sharpened like a blade. They understand now that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction, and love without discernment is servitude. They no longer seek peace through pleasing others. They create it by protecting their energy. Their silence is their armor, their distance their throne. They rule not over others, but over themselves. Every past wound has become instruction, every heartbreak a blueprint of human behavior. They know the value of loyalty, the scent of deceit, And the art of walking away. The narcissist, who once played God in their life, becomes a forgotten chapter. What remains is a being transformed by fire, calm, strategic, and unshakable. They know that power is not in control of others, but in the refusal to be controlled. And that is what makes them truly dangerous. For the narcissist's greatest weapon was illusion, but the empath now lives in reality. And reality is merciless to those who live by lies. The fed-up empath no longer dreams of revenge. They embody justice. Their presence alone unsettles manipulators, their silence commands respect, and their discernment draws clear lines between genuine souls and pretenders. They are no longer merely kind, they are formidable. The world cannot use them, for they now understand the nature of power, the depth of deceit, and the priceless worth of their peace. Thus, the cycle ends, not in blood or vengeance, but in evolution. The empath becomes something higher than the narcissist ever imagined, a being who knows both light and shadow, and walks between them with perfect control. In the final stage of transformation, the empath reaches a kind of enlightenment that is neither soft nor cruel, but balanced. A state of power rooted in wisdom. They are no longer the naive giver who mistakes tolerance for strength, nor the vengeful survivor who seeks to return pain for pain. They have evolved beyond both extremes. Their strength is quiet, deliberate, and deeply self-controlled. They now understand that emotional intelligence, when purified of attachment, becomes strategic brilliance. The empath has walked through the furnace of betrayal and come out forged in discernment. Every scar has become instruction, every heartbreak a classroom, every deception a lesson in human nature. They see now that the narcissist was not a curse but a teacher, an unintentional guide who revealed the anatomy of manipulation. Through suffering, the empath learned the ultimate lesson, how to see people not as they pretend to be, but as they truly are. This vision is their gift and their weapon. Now, they move through life differently. Their energy is sacred, their peace non-negotiable. They do not engage in emotional wars because they no longer need to prove anything. Their silence carries authority, their presence commands respect without words. They have learned to say no, without guilt, to walk away without explanation, and to love without losing themselves. This is true empowerment, the kind that cannot be taken, only earned through endurance and awareness. The narcissist, meanwhile, lingers in the shadows of their old tactics. They try to recreate the cycle, to pull the empath back into the labyrinth of control. But it no longer works. The empath's mind has changed its architecture. Their emotions no longer operate under the same laws. They can see the manipulation before it's spoken, the guilt before it's expressed, the trap before it's set. They do not respond with anger. They respond with stillness. And in that stillness, the narcissist's entire strategy collapses. Freedom becomes the empath's quiet form of vengeance. They do not wish harm, they wish distance. They have discovered that the most devastating punishment for the manipulative is to be forgotten. To the narcissist, who feeds on attention, silence is annihilation. To the empath, it is restoration. The tables have turned not through confrontation, but through transcendence. The narcissist remains chained to illusion, while the empath now lives in clarity, and so the empath emerges not just healed, but reborn into mastery. They understand the balance between heart and mind, between giving and guarding, between compassion and calculation. Their empathy has matured into discernment, their softness has become strength. They are no longer afraid of darkness, for they have walked through it and learned its language. Now they move through life as a paradox, gentle yet unyielding, kind yet unmanipulable, peaceful yet powerful. They have become the rarest kind of person, one who understands both the predator and the prey, yet chooses to be neither. The fed-up empath has evolved beyond victimhood and vengeance into sovereignty, the art of ruling one's self completely. And that is why they are more dangerous than the narcissist ever imagined. For they are not seeking war, they are beyond it. They have mastered themselves, and in that mastery lies a power that no manipulator can touch.